Have you ever felt like a hero just to like the very next day or very soon thereafter to end up feeling like a zero? You know, go from hero to zero? Man, let me tell you, I know that feeling all too well. I used to work in the health club industry. I suppose I've been in sales pretty much my whole adult life. And this really relates to any sales, but for me personally, I worked in the gym industry. I started out as a sales rep, selling memberships and personal training packages to, prospective members and members. And I worked my way up to, sales manager and then eventually to a general manager. And every month in and month out, we had this quota or this number of units that we had to sell, which anybody that's in, front end sales understands, that there's a goal to hit and that every month, usually your compensation is based on like each unit that you sell. And then maybe you get bonuses or whatever off of selling X amount, right? You hit certain tiers or thresholds and then you get this bonus. If you said this next one, you get this bonus. At least that's how ours worked when I was working in the gym business. And so eventually they would start, sending me to different places all over the state of Florida where we're at now. And they would have me going to clubs that maybe they spent a lot of money on and weren't, performing very well. And they would hope that I would be able to get things operating properly. And so I was pretty good at that, man. I put my heart and soul into it. I would work from maybe 7, 8 in the morning all the way until like 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. And this is 6, 7 days a week that I'd be doing this. And so, at the time I had a young family. My wife and I had obviously just gotten married. I was in my early 20s, my oldest, my son. And then, during that time we also had my first daughter and so on, as we had young kids at home. And so working those hours, right? 8 in the morning to 9, 10 o'clock at night didn't really bode well. And so while I may have been a hero at work on the days where I was doing good in sales, I would go home and feel like a zero because I wasn't getting to spend the time with my wife and kids that I really wanted to do, right? What I wanted to do. I didn't have the freedom of time, right? I was making good money, especially for my age, but like I said, I didn't have the freedom to spend the time, to invest the time, I should say, with my family like I really wanted to. Like I knew in my heart that I should, right? So here's kind of how this goes, right? So in the mornings, I'd work a normal job, with department head meetings, making sure the club is clean, making sure any maintenance things get fixed, having meetings, say like the kids club people or the personal training department or the sales team or, meetings with say the operational staff or whatever. And then in the evenings after 5 o'clock, that's when it was what we would call prime time. Most of the people would show up and that's when all the sales would happen. So I was kind of locked into this thing where like I had work to do in this time and I had work that could only really be done. Like I could prepare for the evenings by setting appointments and things like that. But most people were going to come and buy a membership during those hours, right? During those evening hours. And so that was our prime time for sales. And I would want to be there to, either sell memberships myself or if my sales guys needed a manager to come over and, help close the deal, do all those things that I would need to do. And if I wanted to hit that number at the end of the month to be a hero, guess what? I had to be there in order to do that. So even though I was making commission and I was in sales, I was still truly trading my time for money because I was in a B2C retail environment. There was just kind of no getting out of that. It's like selling cars, If you're not at the dealership, you're not going to get the ups, so you're not going to be able to sell the number of units that you want to during the month. You'll be able to bring in units yourself, of course, under your self-production, but why not also have the ups so that you can at least get some laydowns, right? And so probably not something you can't relate to, right? Because I would go all month long selling memberships and our team would sell memberships and the club had a goal and each individual person had a goal every month. And what would happen is at the end of the month, if we hit our goal, we felt great, like a hero. And if we didn't, we felt like a loser. And of course our paychecks reflected the same, but I can remember time after time after time where we would hit plan and things would just be awesome. And when I say hit plan, I mean like hit the goal. And even if we hit 100% of our goal, there'd be this bonus and 110% of our goal or whatever, there'd be tiers where we would hit more of a bonus for hitting bigger numbers, so to speak. And of course, we wanted the biggest bonus we could get. And so I remember even times where I would go to the bar that was like in the out parcel to our local club there with paper agreements to sign people up at the bar because we only needed like 1 or 2 memberships left to hit that goal. And it was like, well, I'm not going to leave tonight without hitting the goal. You don't care if it's 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. I've got an hour or 2 hours left. I'm going to use that time to go and hit this number because I've spent all month long investing into this. Now it would stink to not hit that goal. And so, at 5 o'clock in the evening or the day before or whatever, or I, hit plan at 10 o'clock at night, there'd still be like calls and texts and emails going out about the progress that was being made. So I would see people from other districts, or even in my local district area, where the VPs are sending emails like, hey, congrats to this guy in this club for hitting this number, congrats to this guy. And I would get the same thing, and I just crave that hero call out, right? That attaboy. I crave that affirmation of hitting that number. And I would remember that we would get that, and then I'd go to sleep that night. And of course, it was always tough to go to sleep because if you've ever been in that retail sales type of environment, you're always, putting back energy drinks or coffee or whatever it is to keep your energy level up so that you can continue to sell. And so, you have trouble sleeping that night, but I'd limp my way into the club the next morning, barely get my coffee. And then we'd be on like a conference call that morning with the VP talking about the district. I'd pull up the reports on my computer screen and it's just zeros all the way across. So I go from hero the night before to literally zeros all across the report. 0 sales, 0 leads, right? 0% of plan. And I'd be like, ugh. Here we go again. And I just remember that feeling, right? I went from hero to 0. And as much as, I know the district managers and the VPs and stuff, wanted to appreciate what it is that we did, from an effort standpoint, they're also compensated every month being a hero and then going back to 0. And they would be like, well, what have you done for me lately, Ryan? Even if you weren't in sales, you can probably relate to this in the fact that like you work for a pay period and you rack up your hours and your time, and then the pay period ends, and then boom, now you're back at 0. So it's not like you could just not go to work and then you'd still have that money coming in, that pay period. It wouldn't come in. You literally have to put the time in. You literally have to trade your time for money. And if you don't, then guess what? You don't get paid. So I started brainstorming and thinking to myself, why is it that my reality is the way that it is? And what I realized is that even though I was in sales making commission, right? Because I've been in sales my whole adult life, basically, my working career. But I always knew that, sales was the way to go because you can write your own paycheck. You put in the effort and you get out what you put in. But I didn't quite understand the leverage, right? I didn't understand how to leverage my time well. I was doing a retail sales job that had retail hours. I was working when everybody else was off of work so that I could sell to people that weren't working and take some of that money they made while they were working. And so I started thinking about the owners of the company, and one of the things that I realized is that the owners of the company, I would sell, they would pay me a commission, and if I hit numbers, they'd pay me a bonus. But guess what? All those memberships that I sold, they would then pay again the next month, and the next month, and the next month. And so these guys were making a residual income, right? A residual income. And I was like, wait a second here. These guys are making residual. So the light bulb went off for me. I said, the owners of this company, this gym that I'm working for, they're making a residual income. So if they wake up in the morning and they say, you know what, I think I'm gonna go play golf today, they still get the residual income off those gym memberships. And for them, it's not just residual, right? I mean, the owners, they could put in as much effort or as little effort as they wanted. And so it was a passive residual income. And I know this word passive is controversial because like some people will say, hey, make passive income from real estate. And then real estate experts will tell you real estate investing is anything but passive. And of course, that's true when you are the type of person who is trying to flip houses or better yet, when you're the type of person who is having to use your human sweat equity to purchase, houses versus just having the capital to go and, hey, buy a house for me, Mr. Realtor, and here's the management company manage this house for me and building up a portfolio that way. In that case, maybe real estate can be passive. But truly, when I say passive, I'm saying you're not having to continuously put in effort and trade your time for money to keep that going, to maintain that residual income. So what passive residual income is what these guys had. I wanted it. But I knew that I didn't want to do it through the gym business because I realized, hey, if I even were to go open a gym myself, I'd be working even more hours than I did at that point. Even though I took ownership of it, I felt like, I was responsible for the club and the club's performance. I knew that it would just be more of the same, more trading my time for money, more, tension with my wife and my kids over the fact that I'm not around as much as I knew I should be. And so I wanted to put a stop to that and I wanted to move into something that had a passive residual income. So again, I kept brainstorming, how do I do that? So one of the things that was the issue was the hours. I said, okay, the hours aren't good. So how do I get out of the hours that I'm in? I knew I still had to be in sales because sales allowed me to do the input-output equation where I could input more effort and get output, more income. So I knew the hours were not good, and I knew that I needed to figure out something that wasn't B2C. So in my mind, I said B2C was bad. And so I wanted to find something that was B2B, okay? And the B2B is business to business, whereas B2C is business to consumer. So I didn't want to be selling individuals. I wanted to be selling business to business. And so I was like, well, what could I sell to business that would provide me with a passive residual income? And this is just the story of how I came to where I am today, really. So I came up with a couple ideas. I said, well, insurance. But then I was like, well, if I sell life insurance, right? Or even auto or home insurance, that's still B2C. I'm still like at somebody's kitchen table at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, selling them a policy. I'm not at my kitchen table at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, hanging out with my family, right? Or on vacation or whatever the freedom thing is for you. Maybe for you, it's not your wife and kids. Maybe for you, it's your dog or your parents or your friends, whatever. The point is, I didn't have the freedom to choose what I did with that time if I went into some B2C sale where, again, I'm selling to people in the afternoons and evenings. So I just logically decided in my mind it had to be B2B. And then it had to have a residual income component, something that when I sold it once and I set it up, that it would continue to pay me over and over and over again. Again, insurance is like this. At the time, I didn't really know anything about commercial insurance. Maybe that could have been an option. But what I ended up finding through my research was a little known business to me at the time called merchant services. All right. Now, merchant services, if you're not familiar, is, in long story short, credit card processing. So like this is one form of credit card processing. This is a desktop credit card machine, something that you'd find at like an auto garage where they just type in the dollar amount, hit the green button, stick the card in, it processes the payment, prints a receipt, you either sign it or whatever, you kind of understand. But merchant services can be a point of sale system at a restaurant or a retail shop where they process the payments and you pay either on a pin pad that's facing you or the waiter or the waitress takes it away and goes and processes the payment over at the station. Or it could be an e-commerce store or whatever. So I discovered this thing that like, hey, I could be the guy that provides this service to a business. And then as they're doing what they already do, all I have to do is get them to choose me to be that guy that they do it with, that I get a piece of everything that they swipe. So every time they swipe, I get a piece of that. And they swipe some more, I get a piece of that too. And so I found this like fascinating. It just fascinated me. Like, wow. So they're gonna continue doing what they're doing with me or without me. My job was just to convince them that I was the guy that they should do this with. And so my mind was just blown. I was like, okay, this is business to business. So I'm gonna be going and talking to business owners at days and times that are convenient really for me and for them, which is usually gonna be like business hours. And frankly, a lot of them don't wanna meet early in the morning to take business. They don't wanna meet late in the afternoon or evening. Guess what? They wanna meet from like 10 to 3, right? So the hours were a whole different ball game from what I was used to. And the best part is if I do it correctly and I set up whatever system, whether it be a point of sale system or it be a credit card machine or a gateway for an e-commerce payments, card or whatever, that I was then gonna be able to make a passive residual income month in and month out. And here's the key, right? This whole thing started with us talking today, but about going from hero to zero. Well, let's just say that, 1 month I'm in merchant services and I develop, $500 in monthly recurring revenue that month from what I sold. Well, that means the next month I don't start at zero again. I built the house, right? Or I built the foundation, or I built maybe it's a rung on a ladder or it's a platform on a staircase or whatever, right? A riser. I'm now standing on that. I'm that much further ahead. I start the next month at $500. And then if I add another one to that, guess what? I got $1,000. And if I get another $500, I got $1,500. And I'm starting the month off that way. And you can see how that compounds on top of itself month in and month out. I put in the effort. And so a lot of guys in the merchant services industry, their threshold for what they need to be a hero, right? On a regular basis to start out the month as a hero is just whatever their bills are. And so that threshold is not crazy high, right? You could work for a year maybe and build up, a $5 or $10,000 a month residual base, or maybe it takes you 2 years or 3 years, whatever it is, right? You build it up, and then guess what? Now you start every month as a hero, and you end every month as a hero, and you go from hero to hero instead of hero to zero. And so for me, this concept blew my mind. It changed my life forever. I started in the payments industry 12 years ago. I've been in it ever since. And I just realized, wow, how awesome is this? I've actually, in that process, stepped on some landmines, right? And I've actually had to start over from scratch twice, which, is what it is. But those are landmines that we can teach people how to avoid them, right? And so if this sounds like you, right? You're tired of going from hero to zero, whether you're in sales or you're just working a job or you're trading your time for money, and you're interested in the merchant services business so that you can develop a passive residual income and start replacing the income that you have now with something that comes in whether you go to work or not. If that sounds like you, click the link in the description. I got a link there. You can sign up, we'll get in touch, and we'll coach you through the process of getting started and all that. I mean, let me just tell you, it can change your life. When you have an opportunity like that, why would you wait, right? So a lot of times, I think people are scared. They're so used to the familiar and trading their time for money, it's all they've ever known, that stepping outside of that and just allowing your brain to kind of change its paradigm when it comes to money, to stop trading time for money and to start doing something like this to make passive residual income. And to know that there's a vehicle out there like merchant services that's low-hanging fruit. Guess what? You don't have to take a state license exam like insurance. All we do when we bring on agents is we just do a background check, make sure that you're not a crook, make sure you're not, we're not having to worry about you fraudulently stealing people's information and stuff like that. But if you're a trustworthy individual who works in integrity and you want to work, hard to build up something for you and your family, guess what? That's the type of people that do really well in this business. And maybe you don't have a ton of time to put into it, but if you put a little bit of time into it, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And the more time you put into it in the beginning, the better the outcome is, and then you can take more time off later. Why? Because instead of building up something for somebody else where they're making a residual income like I was in the gym industry, you're building up something for yourself so that the next month, maybe you want to take a vacation, or maybe you want to work again and make even more, whatever it is that your goals are for you and your family. You get the freedom to decide it. So like I said, click the link in the description, or you can just comment start down in the comments, and we'll get you whatever you need in order to get started as well. But like I said, don't wait, don't hesitate. It's so important for the future generations of your family. It's so important even for just your current family that you be the type of person that acts when you know that something is right to do. So I encourage you to do that. Like I said, it's changed my life. My life is forever changed from the merchant services business, from passive residual income. I would never go back, right? I wouldn't go back to doing it the old school way, the way that I used to do it. And so I just want to encourage you in that same thing. Don't continue, right? Make a change, do something now, click the link in the description, comment start, and hopefully I'll see you on the other side.